So here's Mounce chapter 14's parsing. And let's see if there's any questions that we can answer for you here. He did give you a sneaky one in number 3. I don't know if you guys caught that. Yeah, that's not a relative pronoun in number 3, is it? That's the article. It has the rough breathing, but it's missing the accent mark. Yeah, so this is a nominative singular feminine article. So your lexical form needs to reflect that this is not the relative pronoun, but the article. Ha, a, ta, right? We've now covered all of the pronouns here, haven't we? So,
are we still on parsing?
I'm sorry?
It's on parsing.
No questions on parsing. Okay, good. So a canus. What type of a pronoun is a canus? It's a demonstrative pronoun. And is it the near or far? Far. So we're going to translate it as that or those, depending on whether it's singular or plural. And is this singular or plural form of that or those? A canus? It's accusative plural, right? And masculine. We have this us ending here before the omicron stem. So how would we translate this? Those. Right? Like it would be the object of a verb. I love those. Okay? And then our lexical form is going to be kanos, right? Okay, good. Hutoi is another pronoun. What kind of pronoun is that? Okay, it's a demonstrative, but it's near. So we'll translate these forms as what? This or these. This or these. Is this singular or plural form? It's plural. We see that iota case ending. That means it's what? Nominative, singular, or plural. What do we say? Plural and masculine. So we would translate this how? These, and since it's nominative, we would probably expect it to be the subject of the verb. Now, you really should memorize the 3 forms of the 3 genders of the lexical form, right? Because they're not all the same. Hutas. What's the feminine form? Haute. Not aute, but haute. And the neuter form is tuta. Each of those forms is different from the others. So make sure that you know those. All right, good. Any particular issues with these that you want to discuss? Beta? Okay. Let's read this together in unison. Ready? He epangelia, hein autos, epangelata, amen. Got to jump over all those English words. English words trip us up. Okay, so, Taylor, how did you translate this? As far as you can go. Okay. Well, can we start with hey? What's that mean?
It's the
yeah. So what's a pangalia?
Promise.
Yeah. Promise. So this is a typical word for promise in the Greek New Testament. So the promise, and then I have hein. Is this the article, or is this a relative pronoun? Yeah, this is a relative pronoun, okay? So here, I'll just put rel pro right there. And so that means that I'm going to be keeping my eye open for an antecedent or a head that matches the the gender and number. So what gender and number is hein? Feminine? What? Okay. So the gender and number, well, let's forget the case for a moment. The gender and number is feminine singular, right? So that means I want to be looking for an antecedent or a head that matches this. Is there one right before here? Yeah, pangalia is feminine singular, right? So how am I going to translate the relative pronoun here? How can I translate it? Which? or that. So the promise which or that. Now, let's talk about the case. What case is Hain? Do you see the new here? So that's accusative and feminine singular. Is it accusative because Hea Pangalia is accusative? No, because in fact it's not, is it? What case is Hea Pangalia? It's nominative, okay? So remember, relative pronouns have to match the gender and number of their antecedent or head, but their case is determined how? By their function. Their function inside what? The relative clause, okay? So I'm going to bracket out my relative clause. Hein, autos, evangelita, amen. This was probably where as far as it goes. We probably don't have the full sentence here that maybe occurs in the New Testament. Now, evangelita, he tells you, means he, she, or it promised. And you see that I have a form of autos here. Is this the pronoun autos, or do you think this is one of the adjectival uses of autos? Is this the pronoun autos that would mean he, she, or it? Or is this one of the adjectival uses of autos, where it would mean like the same something or someone, or the something or someone himself? And how would I know? What am I looking for if this is the adjective?
Something
Autos.
agrees with in case in
R-
gender.
Right. This is nominative masculine and singular, right? And there's no noun that it accompanies and agrees with in those three ways, which means it's probably the pronoun use, right? So how would I translate this pronoun if it's masculine? He. So the promise which he, and is autos the subject or the direct object here? Being that it's nominative. It's the subject. Okay, so here's my subject, which he promised Amen. Which pronoun is this?
First person.
Yeah, this is first person, and is it singular or plural? It's plural. Good. And what case is it? That in ending. It's not accusative, not genitive. It's dative. It's dative plural first person. So which he promised to, using the dative keyword, to whom?
To us.
It's Ada here, not upsilon, not you, but us, right? So, which he promised to us. So what function does the relative pronoun have relative to the verb here?
The direct object.
It is the direct object of promise. Okay? So subject, verb, direct object is the pronoun, and then this is the indirect object, isn't it? It's the recipient of the promise. We, us. Okay? So the reason this is accusative is because it's the direct object of the verb. Now let's replace the relative pronoun with the head. If we said he promised us the promise, doesn't that get at the idea here? It does, right? So he promised us the promise. So the promise which promised, he promised us. Okay? So this is a relative clause. This is a relative pronoun here. Other questions? Or Taylor, do you need any more help with that?
One of my questions is, when you have so many nominative, which are supposed to be the subject, how do you fit them back? Like, because you're breaking out the clause, and I get that, but when you put it back into like the phrase or the sentence, how do you know which is the more dominant nominative?
Yeah. Well, you're at a disadvantage here because the warm-up exercises are intentionally shortened, right? So you don't actually have a full sentence here. You simply have the promise which he promised us. Where's the verb for the first noun? It's been chopped off, right? If you had had that verb, it probably would have been a lot easier to identify. But one thing that you have going for you is that whenever you find your relative pronoun and you can figure out where the relative clause begins, that relative clause is going to continue until it ends. And once it ends, if there's more to the sentence, it's going to belong with the first part. In other words, sometimes your relative clause is bracketed with the main or the independent clause before and after. And sometimes the main clause comes to an end, so to speak, and then your relative clause starts and goes to the end of the sentence. And so you don't see them kind of getting what appears to be mixed up.
Right.
Okay? But once you find the start and the end of your relative clause, then you're going to be able to put all the pieces of the grammatical puzzle together. Find the verb, decide what you think the subject is, right? So this is the closest nominative thing to this verb. We're going to make that the subject. Especially if you don't know verbs yet because you haven't gotten to them in chapter 16 and following, but you know that the subject is a singular third-person entity because of the he, she, it promise translation. And so that makes this altos, which means he, a good candidate to be the subject of that verb, right? We'll look at some more examples as we get to the big beefy translation exercises, and maybe it'll be a little clearer as we work through those. All right. Any other questions on the warm-up exercises? This is your chance to have all your questions answered. If you don't, let me just drill a couple of things with you real quickly on these warm-ups, okay? So I'm gonna just erase all this stuff and try to clear that up. Now, take a look at tasamea ha epoye. This is my relative pronoun right here, okay? I'll just put an R above it. What case gender number is ha? Nominative, and it could be accusative, plural, and neuter, right? Now, let's look backwards. This is going to be the head, so I'll put an H above that, or an antecedent. Is this neuter and plural? Tasamea?
Yes.
It is. So we definitely have found the head, haven't we? So whatever this relative clause is saying, it's modifying the signs. Okay, so the signs which, and then he tells us what epoye means, which he was doing. Here's the question. I have a choice between nominative and accusative. It could in form be either one, but in this context it must be one or the other. Which must it be? And what determines which it must be? What determines the case of a relative pronoun? Its function. And inside what? Inside the relative clause. So when I bracket out my relative clause, I've got it here, right? So what's the subject of epoye? Could it be something plural, like this relative pronoun is? Are the signs doing anything? Right? Because epoye means was doing. Is it the signs that were doing things? No. Because the subject is singular, right? Based on the translation he's given us. So how would the signs be functioning in relation to the verb he was doing? It would be the direct object, right? This is the direct object of the doing. So Jesus is probably the he here, okay? So he was doing which things, right? So the signs which he was doing. Relative pronouns and heads always refer to the same thing, right? They are co-referential. So if I replace my relative pronoun with tasamea, I would know what the relative clause is trying to say, right? He was doing the signs. So the signs which he was doing. So it's got to be what? Accusative case. It can't be nominative. Yes?
Just to clarify, the tasamea itself can be nominative or accusative though.
Yes, exactly. Since he's chopped off whatever the rest of the main clause is, we don't know the function of tasamea.
Okay.
Right? It could be, I know tasamea ha epoye. And here it would be accusative. And it would just so happen to be the case that that was accusative. But this would not be accusative because that's accusative. This would be accusative because it's the object of epoye. Right? Okay. Now, look at has kataskuase ten hadan su. You don't have a head here, right? This is your relative pronoun, but there's no head. It's a headless relative pronoun. So how am I going to translate this? I could translate it as the one who, or he who will prepare ten hadan su. And there's my direct object, right? Your way, or the way of you. All right. This one's a little bit tricky. Delta. I'm surprised none of you asked about this, because every year I've ever taught Greek, somebody asks about this one. Okay, here's my relative pronoun, ha. What gender and number is it? Just looking at the form. We'll talk about the case in a minute. Okay, the gender and number is singular and neuter, right? We'll figure the case here in a minute. So, look at what I've got here. I've got hen, tone, ploion preceding my relative pronoun. So something over here is the head of the relative clause. Something is the antecedent. Now, if my relative pronoun is neuter and singular, which one of these things, hen or tone ploion, is likely to be the head? Okay, so very likely we've got our head here. So it's one, and this genitive phrase is modifying the one, right? But it's one of the boats, and that one is one which. Okay. Now let's talk about the case of this this ha relative pronoun. Could it be nominative? Yes. It could be accusative as well, right? Because neuter, nominative, and accusative forms are the same. Now look at ain. What does that mean? She, she, it was. This is a form of me, and subjects of me have to be what case? Subjects of any verb have to be what case? Nominative. And then whatever the thing or person is or was will be what case?
Nominative.
To be is not a transitive verb that takes a direct object, right? It's a linking verb or a copular verb. It will have a nominative noun that functions as the predicate too. Okay? So, can I have an accusative form of the relative pronoun if ain is my verb? No, I can't, right? So this is not, it's not possible for this to be accusative. It's got to be nominative case. And it therefore is functioning how? Very likely as the subject, right? One of the boats which was. Now look at Simonas. You know that the word is really Simon, right? What do I have here? That's a genitive singular form. That's right. So this is which was of Simon. How would I make that good English? Which was Simon's. That's right. So one of the boats which boat was Simon's. Okay? All right, so that's my relative pronoun. Hen is my antecedent or head. That's why, by the way, remember your lexical forms for the number one? It's heis, mia, hen, right? Masculine, feminine, neuter. There it is. All right, great. So you see what I'm doing here? Just trying to help you tie those relative pronouns back to their heads so you see what they're modifying. Shall we look at the translations? All right, so let's look at number 3. We have a postpositive conjunction here, day. So in our translation, we're going to stick it on the outside because it conjoins this sentence with whatever came before, even though it has to go in second position in Greek. So, but or now, what's gnorizo? I make known who men. Who's that? Yeah, this is second person singular plural. It's a second plural pronoun. You see the you, right? You. And what case is it? Dative. So this is I make known to you, adelphoi, brothers. This is naming my addressee, right? I make known to you, brothers. Ta evangelion. What's that? Yeah, the good news or the gospel. Now, think about the verb gnorizo in terms of what it means, to make known. Is this a verb that you would expect a direct object to come with? He made known. Aren't you waiting for an object here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a word that might be my direct object. Could this be the right case for a direct object now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, because this actually could be accusative or nominative, right? So nominative, accusative, neuter, singular. But since I have a verb that requires a direct object, my best bet is to go with the accusative, right? So I make known the gospel. Now, he's going to tell us something about the gospel using a relative clause. Relative clauses modify nouns. Relative clauses are adjectival in function. So what about this gospel that he's made known? Well, I have my relative pronoun here. Does its gender and number match what looks like the head? Yeah, that's neuter singular, right? Ha is neuter singular. Now, this relative pronoun could also be nominative or accusative, couldn't it? So I got to look at the verb inside the relative clause and ask how this might be related to the verb. Is it the subject, object? What's going on here? Well, again, you don't know verbs, but he gives you the translation. It's I preached here. So could the relative pronoun be the subject if I am the subject of the verb? It cannot, right? So I'm going to take this not as the subject, but as the object, right? So it's, and of course it makes sense that I would preach the gospel, right? The relative pronoun is referring to the gospel, so that's going to be the direct object, and that's why it's accusative case. So the gospel which I preached, whomen? To you. Okay. Now, here's what's amazing, is Paul now stacks a bunch of relative clauses here that all describe the head, ta evangelion, the gospel. So if you ever were looking for a good sermon to preach, okay, take this verse, and each relative clause could be a major point in your sermon or Bible study. Tell me about the gospel. Well, the gospel is a gospel which is to be preached, a gospel which is to be received, a gospel in which you can stand, and a gospel by which you are saved. That'll preach, won't it? Okay. So if you can really grab the grammar of the language, you can let the points that Paul is trying to make come out in your message. All right? But take a look. I have relative clauses here. Another set of relative clause here, and then here. Okay? Now, each of these relative clauses follows the head, so they're all modifying the gospel. And notice every one of these has a neuter relative pronoun, right? See those? All of those are neuter. Now, they're not all the same case, are they? So here, it was direct object, so it was accusative case. Over here, it's the same. It appears to be the direct object, accusative case, right? Because the subject is you. You received the gospel, right? So it's the gospel which you received. How is the chi functioning here? Is this and or also? It's also, which you also received. Okay? And then I have enho kai estekate. In which. So why is this dative case? We know it's neuter singular because the head is ta evangelion, but why is it dative? It's the object of the preposition n. N requires its objects to be in what case? Dative, okay? And so the prepositional phrase in which is modifying hestekate, you stand. You stand where? You stand in which gospel, right? So in which also you stand. And look, I have di hu kai sodzeste. What case is who? That's genitive. Why is it genitive? Yeah, because what's my preposition here? It's dia, and dia could actually take its object in the genitive case or the accusative case. And remember, it'll mean something different depending on what case its object is in. Here it's genitive, so it means what? Through. If it were accusative, it would mean, yes, on account of. Okay, so we're going to translate this as through. So through which also, sodzeste, you are saved. Okay? So the gospel does a lot of things in Paul's theology here, doesn't it? It's preached, it's received, you stand in it or by it, and you are saved through it. Does it surprise us that he would say, woe is me if I don't preach the gospel? All right, so there you go. Who asked for number 3? Thank you. So, do you have any other questions about this, or does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Bracketing them out.
Look at number 10 here. So, kai humes marturis, and you witnesses. Me, Tarzan, you, Jane, you witnesses. So what does that mean? And you as witnesses. And you are witnesses, ponton, genitive plural. So you are witnesses, what? What's your genitive keyword? Of. So you are witnesses of all. Of all what? Well, it doesn't give us another noun that it agrees with in case gender number, does it? It just goes straight into a relative pronoun. So you could say of all things, right? Because this is a substantival use of the adjective pas upon. So you're witnesses of all things or everything. And then how will I translate my relative pronoun here? Yeah. So we're going to use a form of which. Now, if this is genitive, we're going to be thinking, keyword genitive of, right? We're going to see something interesting here in just a minute. But let's keep going. Epoiasen, he did. So which he did. En te chora. I don't know if we've spent any time talking about te before, but it's often not prefixed, but precedes a noun that is conjoined by another chi. So, so you might translate it as both in the region of the Judeans and in Jerusalem. Okay? Now, epoiasen, he did. What's the direct object of epoiasen? That verb should take a direct object, right? The rest of this is just telling you where he did something. Okay, yeah. Presumably, hon is my direct object. And it would make sense, right? You're witnesses of everything, and that everything is the direct object of he did. He did that set of everything in these places. Okay? Why is this not accusative? Because that's what I would have expected my direct object to be. And the problem here is this little problem known as attraction. It's been a problem since we were hitting puberty, I think. But this is grammatical attraction, though. Okay? What is attraction when it refers to relative pronouns? Well, what did we learn? Relative pronouns have a case, a gender, and a number. What determines the case?
It's function.
Function, right? It's not determined by the case of the antecedent or the head. Gender and number, yeah, the head or the antecedent determines that. Okay? So, this is presumably neuter plural. Okay, your witnesses of all things. Okay? And it's genitive. This should match the neuter plural, and hone could be neuter plural, couldn't it? It should be accusative because it's the direct object of apoiosin, but its case has been attracted to the case of the antecedent, which is not normal, but it does happen in the Greek New Testament. Okay? And so you might think you need to translate it as of which, but you're not gonna. Okay? You're going to translate it as if it really were accusative, even though it's not. It's genitive because its case has been attracted to, like a magnet, right, to the case of the head or the antecedent. But there is no true genitive function that hone relative pronoun can play in its own relative clause. It doesn't even make sense, right? Of which he did. That doesn't make sense. Which he did of. So you're just going to translate it as if it were accusative. Okay? So that is attraction. It still dogs us. All right. Any final questions? Let's look at number 6 here. Yeah. So we'll read this out loud. Ready? Go. Has gar ean thele tain suchein autu sosai apalese autain has dan apalese tain suchein autu heneken emu kai tu evangeliu sose autain. All right. So, gar. We know that is postpositive, isn't it? So we translate that as for. And so now I have has eon thele. Is that a relative pronoun? Yeah. Is there a head? No. So this is a headless relative clause. I'm going to translate it as he who or the one who, right? Now, here is that one of those particles of contingency that can give us the sense of whoever is aeon. So whosoever he may be, wishes, and then we're going to have to go grab this infinitive over here, wishes to save tain sukenautu. So wishes to save his, right, that's genitive, so his soul. What about that person, whoever wishes to save his soul? This whole thing is functioning as the subject, right? I've got the head is the one who wishes to save his life. What about that person? He will lose it. Okay, I think he gives you the translation of apolese here, right?
Yeah.
So he will lose it. And then he gives another statement. Has dan apolese tain sukein autu heneken emu. This whole thing. Oh, no, that's not quite the end. It's here. So my next relative clause, again, is headless, right? The head is null or unstated. But I could, again, translate it as the one. So the one who loses his life. Heneken, what's that mean? On account of, or for the sake of who? Who's amu? Me, and to evangeliu. So for the sake of me and the gospel. What about that person? The one who does all that? So say will save. Autain. What's the it referring to? Why is this feminine singular? Yeah, it's referring to the sukein, right? So someone who loses his suke will save it if he loses it for the sake of Jesus. Okay? All right. I'm going to just look at one more, and this is really quick and really short. Number 4, karati de theu emi ha emi. Paul says this. Again, de is our postpositive conjunction. And karati, that's charis. What case is charis here?
Dative singular.
This is dative. This is a third declension noun. Charit is my stem, consonantal stem. Iota is the dative singular. So by grace, right? One of the ways to translate the dative is by. So by grace, and then I have theu. So by whose grace? Yeah, by God's grace. All right. So, and by God's grace, Amy, I am, and then I have ha-emi. Now, how do you translate that? I am who I am. So is this who? Here's the question now. What gender and number and case is ha?
Neuter, right? Neuter.
Ah, it is. So it looks like it's nominative, and it can be accusative, singular, neuter. So what's the antecedent of this neuter relative pronoun? There is not one. The head is null. It's unstated. So put this little null symbol here, right? So there's no head. The head is an unstated neuter singular noun. I am, so let's try this on for size. I am the thing that I am. Okay? So, this is, obviously, this relative pronoun can't be accusative because I don't have a verb that could take a direct object here, right? This, I is the subject of a me, so ha must be the predicate nominative. And that's why it's nominative case, okay? So I am the thing that I am, or I am that which I am, okay? So he's not saying I am who I am, or he would have said a me, has, a me, right? He would have used a masculine singular form of the relative pronoun. I am the person that I am. I am the man that I am. But no, he's referring to himself as, as something. I am. That most of our translations say I am what I am. Right? And the reason they're saying what is because they are reflecting the reality that this is in fact a neuter relative pronoun. Okay? So I just want you to see that. Yep. By the grace of God, I am what I am. I am that which I am, or I am the thing that I am. Okay, good.